Welcome to class, everyone. Today's essential questions are, is science more like Star Wars or Star Trek?
Nerd!
Is science more than just a tool? That's kind of a serious one. Maybe it should be an actual essential question. Should we teach more direct lessons on ethics? Let's introduce today's teachers. I'm Mr. Rabbers, and in keeping with my pyromania of days gone by, I would use starter fluid and a lighter to burn off cobwebs from my front porch.
When was this?
Late grade school, early high school.
Okay.
Maybe through most of high school.
Maybe, you say.
Let's take it over to Mr. Walter.
I'm Mr. Walter, and on multiple occasions, I have accidentally gifted alcohol to a sober person.
You mean like they're not...
Like they're a recovering alcoholic.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Less than ideal.
Yeah, that's not what you want to do. I'm Mr. Linton, and I was in Puerto Rico on a mission trip once, and we
Did
were
you
there
think
for,
Machu Picchu was there?
No, but we were there for like 2 weeks, and it was going well, and developed a really nice base tan. So we went to the beach, and I'm like, you know what? I probably don't need sunscreen today. I have a base tan.
How'd that go for you?
Blisters.
Yeah.
Third degree burns, second degree burns. And despite all that, we are still the smartest guys in the classroom. Welcome to class, everyone. On today's episode, I thought it'd be nice to piggyback off of Mr. Linton's episode on Stupid Wars. So we could take a look at some instances where science took a sharp turn off a cliff, and in many of the cases that we're going to look at today, took a lot of people's health, livelihood, and lives with them. So we're looking at stupid things that science has led us to believe, or people doing science somewhat incorrectly, or some take on that theme. Some of the material today comes from a book called Pandora's Lab, 7 Stories of Science Gone Wrong by Paul Offit, and he felt compelled to put that he's a medical doctor in
I am one of the stupid ones.
on the sleeve there. I do highly recommend the book. I enjoy his writing. It's pretty well researched. He has kind of a dramatic flair for writing, so he probably leaves some things out for the sake of keeping the narrative going. But most of those things you could research some more on your own.
Does it follow APA formatting, Chicago style? Is there footnotes and notes?
Published book. So
Are there no citations? Ooh,
I see citations.
There's at least a works cited page. Okay, I'll count
So
it.
you can double check those on your own if you enjoy doing that. We're going to do this again, round robin style. Gentlemen, what is the leading cause of death today in most developed countries?
Water.
Cancer.
No and no.
Smoking.
No.
Heart disease.
There it is. Yeah, heart disease.
Okay. I thought it was heart disease, but I was like, nah, it can't be. I have to
it's
do the
gotta
other
be.
ones.
So, heart disease is not the topic, but we're going to get there. It's the first.
That was a very good question to open us off. Then. Thank you.
Well, we're going to be talking about the great margarine mistake and about our lack of data leading us to the thought that margarine was better than butter at some point in our history, and then quickly learning, yes.
Sorry, we are in the state of Wisconsin, so
Yeah.
Wisconsin never made this mistake.
No, I think they outlawed margarine, so if you had wanted to go get margarine during those days, you had to go cross the border into Illinois or maybe Minnesota.
At the very least, they banned restaurants from serving it, I think.
Yeah, there were some laws in the books.
Interesting.
Anyway, so why did we think that margarine was better than butter? Well, we got to turn the clock way back to 1913. And by the 20th century, people were living longer. They were reducing the amount of deaths due to infectious diseases because of, later in the 40s and 50s, things like penicillin and antibiotics. We were starting to vaccinate people. We found smallpox, I can't remember when, but then we developed polio vaccine, and all these people started living longer, along with better health care, better diets. And then the leading causes of death were then cancer, which is kind of just a side effect of living longer, and heart disease. And so we kind of set our sights on trying to figure out, why are people dying of heart disease? And there was this guy in 1913, Russian Nikolai Anikov. Maybe that's how you pronounce it.
Look, whatever it was, you should have pronounced it very confidently.
Nikolai Anikov.
Nobody but our Russian listeners would have known the difference.
Right. And he does find a link between cholesterol and atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of the blood vessels in and around the heart. But then we get to the 1950s, so keep that idea of cholesterol in the back of your mind. We have another guy named Ansel Keys. He looks at demographic studies and this connection between fat intake between different demographic groups from around the world and longevity and incidence of heart disease. And he finds that the more fat you eat, typically the more high-fat diets have a higher incidence of heart disease, of atherosclerosis. And so this kicks off a wave of policies, and we're kind of focusing mostly on the United States here, aimed at reducing the fat intake in Americans. And you might think reducing fat is usually a good thing. The problem was that they did not have enough data to make the recommendations that they were making. They had some scant studies, a little bit of data, and then they went ahead, we need to reduce our fat intake by 30%, or we need to reduce it by this amount. And they just said, sure, that sounds good. Let's just go with that. And so then we get to this looking at the differences in fats, because not all fats are created equal. And maybe you had this in high school biology or chemistry or in some college level health classes. You've got saturated and unsaturated fats. The saturated comes from how many hydrogen atoms are in the fat molecule. In the saturated fats, you've got no double bonds. You've got all single bonds. I know this is some chemistry that might be bringing back some PTSD, but you've got all single bonds and as much hydrogen in saturated fat as possible. So it has, and the more hydrogen, the more energy. Hydrogen is the energy of the fats. Mm-hmm. In unsaturated fats, which we typically think of as better, there's at least one double bonded carbon, which means there's less hydrogen, which means there's less energy, which again, you may think is better for you. However, there is two different types of unsaturated fats. There is cis unsaturated fats and trans unsaturated fats. And the cis and trans relates to the shape of the molecule. If you have a cis unsaturated fat, it forms a bent molecule. This is why, and these molecules then don't stack very well because they're all bendy and whatnot. This is why unsaturated fats that are cis are typically liquids at room temperature, like your different seed oils.
Gotcha.
All those are liquids at room temperatures because those molecules don't stack. They can't form into a solid at room temperatures. But then you take trans fats. Those are linear, so they do stack very well, and they do become solid at room temperature. So you think like lard, well, maybe not lard, that is, I think, saturated fat, but you think like Crisco or some types of vegetable shortening. The term used to be partially hydrogenated oils. Was every
a better name.
Yeah. Those typically have a lot of trans fats in them. Now, why this big discussion on cis versus trans unsaturated fats? It's because of the effect that each of them has on the human physiology when it comes to cholesterol. Trans fats will kill your HDL, your high density cholesterol, which is good for you. You want a certain amount of HDL. So it's reducing that, and it's increasing your LDL, which is your low density, bad cholesterol. So it does to your cholesterol panel exactly what you don't want to do if you have a ton of saturated fats in your diet. So with this lack of evidence, we were being pushed to do margarine over butter and ingest a ton of trans fats. But all that was doing was really messing with people's cholesterol. This is mostly through like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I have a fact to share.
Is that the same time that they made McDonald's switch from beef tallow to vegetable Oils.
That might have been, yeah, because there are a lot of advocacy groups, and again, going off of this scant evidence, but just feeling very convinced that this was the way to go. In 1993, this is from page 55 of this book. In 1993, a study done by Harvard researchers showed that if people replaced just 2% of the energy from trans fats with other unsaturated fats, they could decrease their risk of heart disease by 33%. Another study estimated that eliminating trans fats from the American diet would prevent 250,000 heart attacks and related deaths every year. So that's what they were estimating as the negative effect of the amount of trans fats we were eating and using during the 80s, 90s, and a little bit up into the early 2000s. And then by the 2000s, the data was finally coming out. And they started to then ban trans fats at different levels. And I think they are pretty much completely banned from commercial cooking, restaurants, anything sold in stores. And so maybe they allow a little bit of it in microwave popcorn. I think that's what this book says is still a lot, like an allowable amount. So if you eat a lot of microwave popcorn, you might want to
FDA regulated.
you might want to double check that. But yeah, so that is the story of how we thought we were being healthy by reducing our unsaturated fats, but then giving a lot of people a lot more heart attacks because we were suggesting they eat the wrong type of fat.
You know, the good news is that since then, nobody has ever gone all in on some dietary recommendation and had incredibly bad side effects from that. Never again.
Never again.
Atkins.
That's another book that I read. Like every diet fad, like there's no diet that's absolutely the best. Just find one that works and then stick with it. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be
we
some
should go back to primitive diets.
paleo. There's not going to be one
That exists. You know that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There's not going to
Fish
be
and seal blubber, and you take those. How is that? What's that Inuit delicacy where they take the dead birds and they stuff
looks
them
at us
into a
as if we
seal
know.
carcass, and then they bury it for a year, and then
that
they take it
fermenting it?
out, and yes, and they take
Okay.
it out and they eat it. It can kill you. It
like
it
puffer
has
fish.
killed people many times, but yeah, apparently that's.
But when it doesn't,
But when it doesn't,
it's worse.
the best fermented bird you've ever had, apparently.
Look, I'm going to go next because I also want to blame Russian scientists for things.
Joke's on you guys. I only want to blame German scientists. So
I got some of those later. No.
okay.
Have you ever heard of Trofim Lysenko?
Yep.
I have not. No, not before you mentioned him earlier.
Yeah, well, so he was a Russian scientist, alive, grew up during Russian Revolution era, became a scientist around World War II. So tail end of the 1930s, becomes a prominent scientist in the field of biology with an agricultural focus. And so he kind of focused on how do we grow more food?
Our food.
We need more food per acre. We need more productive so we can feed our people. And so that was his focus. And from there, he became very political. And the Soviet Union adopted him and elevated him very rapidly because he fit their political mold. Okay, his politics encouraged farmers to be engaged in year-round farming. He claimed that his methods would be able to produce greater grain yields. He also was from a peasant background himself, and he was not part of traditional academic circles, which kind of fit Stalinist ideology. We're going to elevate, and they were trying to elevate these peasants and replace the existing more bourgeoisie type people with the lower class. And so he kind of checked all those boxes for them. And as a result, he became the director of genetics for the Academy of Sciences in the Soviet Union for about 20 years, from 1940 until 1960.
Did he have a formal education?
He did.
Okay.
But I think it was less standard than the other folks.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
The folks.
Yeah, the other ones that he was replacing. And so he became hugely influential. There's like a ridiculously long list of all the awards he got. I think Lenin has his name in a bunch of those awards. But anyway, eventually, Soviet scientists were forced to denounce any science that disagreed what he became known as Lysenkoism.
Fascinating.
Some who refused were executed.
Wonderful.
And as a result, one thing that I read said the Soviet Union went from one of the best like genetic studies countries in the world to like the worst, set back their field of genetics about 50 years. 3,000 prominent scientists were dismissed, imprisoned, or executed, and he pretty much single-handedly dictated Soviet agricultural policy for quite a while.
So is he responsible for the Holodomor?
What?
Never mind.
Great. So, before I get to the impact, I want to tell you about Lysenkoism. And since you two are more sciencey than me, I thought I would say, here's what he said, and then you can react.
On board.
Wonderful.
Okay. First, one of his foundational things was that the characteristics of a body influence the development of the offspring of said body.
Yay, eugenics.
Repeat that back again. Hold on.
No, because he also did not believe that genes existed.
But he's the head of genetics.
Yes.
So
Perfect.
So he thought the characteristics of the body influence the development of the offspring, which includes traits developed throughout your life.
okay.
Do you get what I'm saying? So like,
Something you could gain.
aren't there studies that say like kids these days have bigger thumbs because they play video games so much? So like their thumbs have.
I have never heard that
You've
study.
not heard that?
No.
No, I remember the one viral post about people leaning forward so much there's like something in their spine, in the top of their neck.
But
That's something like
he
that.
would say that would pass to your children.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't. Sometimes, yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like he's taking genetics, just denying the genes part of it.
I'm just curious, like what he thought carried the information.
Yes.
From
That's what
from
I'm
parent to
curious
child.
about.
Then
There was some sciencey words that were nonsense
sure.
that he believed, so I didn't really write them down. Okay. Now,
That's
that
unfortunate.
also transferred to, he said that scion, so if you have like plants, like citrus, they do the thing where they cut it and they graft other citrus to the.
Mm-hmm.
He believed that the scions, which were attached, would transfer information down to the stock.
No.
So by grafting other plants to the stock, you could improve the stock.
Gotcha. I don't know.
I don't think that's true.
I'm pretty sure that's not true.
I'll put a healthy branch on a dead tree, and that tree will live now. I
Yeah.
don't think that's how that works.
I don't think
I hope he limited that to plants.
Yeah, his only field is plants.
Good.
He dismissed the concept of random variation and mutation.
Okay. Not a good idea.
So
Not great in genetics.
So he believed that if you controlled things and any changes were a product of directly from the environment, and therefore you could control them completely.
Fascinating.
Okay. He also believed that plants and animals of the same species, plants engaged in mutual assistance with one another.
Depends on the species.
So there is some, to that end, trees use the network set up by fungi and mushrooms to communicate and exchange nutrients, but that's not what we're talking
No,
about.
he's saying if you put a bunch of oak trees near each other, they help each other.
Yeah,
Because
that's
they're the same species.
right, and that's what I'm saying. There is some current research to suggest that the oak trees can use the pathways. I forget what they're called.
They'll share nutrients.
They can
and
share
stuff like
nutrients,
that.
yeah.
they'll pull water uphill for other trees behind them.
They
and
can send
stuff
out.
like that.
They can
That's
send
But
out.
I'm not sure they're doing it for them or other trees are stealing from them. Unclear on that fact.
Yeah, there was one.
I haven't researched that.
Part of
enough,
that
I
study
guess.
was that mother trees do more to help their sons
Baby
and daughters,
trees.
baby trees.
Baby tree.
Interesting. He described plants as self-sacrificing. So plants do not die because of lack of water or because of environmental factors. They die so that they can be used to feed the next generation of plants.
So
It's like
they just off themselves
This-
to give up their
They off
nutrients.
themselves.
Yes.
This sounds like anthropomorphism.
Well, basically, what he was doing was he was taking communism as an ideology
And applying it
applying
and
it to
applying it to
plants.
plants.
Botany.
Yeah.
Fear my botany powers.
So if you put a bunch of seeds very close together in the ground, they will strengthen each other
No.
and produce better
Unfortunate.
plants. Other random beliefs that he had, he believed that milk production in cows was based solely on how you treated said cow.
Good cow.
So he treated his cattle very well.
Very well, yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. I don't think it impacted milk production very much, but he believed that it did.
I'm sure those cows were happy though.
I do have a quick question while you're on this.
Yeah.
Did he employ any standard experiments with like variables and control groups at all to substantiate these claims, or were they?
He once said mathematics had no place in biology.
Ew. Okay.
I think that answers that.
He also argued cells could grow from non-cellular materials.
Abiogenesis. Okay. Never seen before in nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these
Well,
are all
that's-
things,
That's
right?
the building block of all evolution.
So it's this hodgepodge of different scientific beliefs that most of which have no bearing whatsoever on his field or not based on any of the basic foundational principles of biology or genetics. And so what really launched him to start them was this thing called vernalization.
Vernal mean spring.
Yes. So what you can do with seeds is you can trick them into thinking winter happened, and then they will think it's spring and grow.
Wonderful.
Okay? That is a thing that you can do.
Yes.
However, he then dictated it for basically all seeds throughout the Soviet Union, which involves treating them seeds with extreme cold temperature and moisture, and then planting them after that. The problem with that is it's much more work to do this to all of these seeds. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong with that. It also makes them more susceptible to certain kinds of fungus and molds.
Right.
And so he took something that he had success with on a small scale and then mandated it for the Soviet Union. He also did some similar stuff with summer planting of potatoes that I didn't quite fully grasp because I'm not a potato planter.
Sure.
They had some issues in the Soviet Union. They were trying to plant potatoes in warmer climes that weren't really great for potatoes, and it was causing some rot. And he blamed it on the decline of the potato genome or something, even though he didn't believe in genetics. And then he completely dismissed the fact that there are viruses that attack potatoes.
Right.
And he thought it was just environmental factors. And so he said you should pile all of your potatoes together, and then that will... I mean, again, like it's just... him, I imagine, sipping some vodka at home, being like, I've got it.
Pile all potatoes together in whole. It will grow one great potato plant.
And again,
communism.
and again, you said that if anyone were to stand up to him, if anyone said, "I have a other thought," they would be
Gulag.
gulag.
Yeah, they would be, they'd lose their job, imprisoned, execution is a possibility. And so this is imposed. And again, this, because of how closely all of this aligns with communist ideology in the Soviet Union, Stalin loved him and continued to elevate him even in the face of mixed results. Now, the impact of this is going to be that a lot of people die because of famine. There's like widespread crop failure. I tried to Google the number, and I couldn't really get a consensus. One of the sites I visited said as many as 7 million deaths from famine. Wow. Now the question is, how much of that can you attribute directly to his agricultural policies, and how much are other factors? It's a little bit hard in famine, but when you're telling people, well, plant all your seeds super close together after you've frozen them in water for a while, and then also if you bury them deeper, then the plant will be stronger because it has to work through the ground to get to the surface, and it will be better for it. That's bad.
How long did it take for them to say this is not working?
So he was in charge of this organization for 20 years. Some of the stuff I read said once Khrushchev came to power after Stalin's death, Khrushchev started to shelve him a little bit. He let him keep his position, but he lost some of his influence.
Gotcha.
Because I think it was recognized that it wasn't really working.
Right.
But it doesn't end here.
Oh, goodness.
Because you know who became a communist country around that time and just adopted all of the Soviet ideologies?
China.
And
then they decided to go killing all the pests and caused a famine of their own.
There was a great Chinese famine it was 1959 to 1961. And again, estimates vary from 15 to 55 million people died in that famine, where they were also adopting Lysenkoism. So combined, this guy may have been responsible for over 60 million deaths.
I don't think you can blame the Chinese one on him, though. Reason being, because they were also doing the war on the 4 pests at that period of time, which is where they said mosquitoes, flies, sparrows, and mice all need to be exterminated from this country. The problem with that being it affected the food chain. When they killed all the sparrows, they got way more grasshoppers, as in a plague of locusts descended on the country, and that's going to affect a lot of crops. So again, yeah, the numbers are really difficult to figure out how much would be his fault and how much is the bugs.
Yeah, and that is the issue. But the fact that this guy...
The fact that any person has killed over 1 million people, yeah.
Or just that all other voices were silenced, and we're just going to go all in on his theory that is not based on anything else that has ever been said. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, at this point, there were studies talking about the idea of characteristics being passed down, but he thought you could treat with the vernalization. He thought if we treat these seeds in this way, then all of the future seeds from that line of seeds will also have this vernalization effect on them because they'll have been modified by their environment.
It is like a really weird take on artificial selection that just didn't have any founding in anything that was data driven.
Or you think you can trigger that kind of effect in a single generation?
Yeah. Nope. Doesn't work like that.
Eventually, and I think he was a believer in all of this. He actually really did believe it, because when he did get shelved, he still had his own little farm that he operated based on his techniques. I think probably shaking his fist at the institutions who have ignored his wisdom while he died in obscurity.
Yikes.
Fascinating.
So key takeaway there being, don't let any one person be the sole voice on a discipline, and make sure there are some experiments to back up what they're saying.
Maybe some longitudinal studies that support the findings.
And even if something makes sense, it doesn't mean it's right.
You know what he could have used?
What?
A lobotomy. Moving on.
Look at that transition.
Lobotomies.
King of transitions.
We are talking about the ice picks, everybody.
If you are squeamish, we won't get too graphic, I hope, Mr. Walter. But I mean, when talking about
I'm
lobotomies,
sure. No,
we
yeah,
have to be talking about very specific pieces of human anatomy. It all revolves around the head, but yeah, it's
It'll be fine.
The procedure is pretty gruesome.
And there were several procedures throughout the years. But if you're not familiar with lobotomies, it's an attempt to sever nerve connections in one or more lobes of the brain, performed mostly in the 40s and 50s, although it started in 35-ish. And it's for things like schizophrenia, manic depression, mania, bipolar disorder, et cetera, et cetera. Any mental disorder at a certain point in time was like, you know what? Could use a lobotomy.
Is it kind of like how people put salt on all of their food?
It's kind of like how everyone decided that
not?
margarine was a great idea, even though science said, not really. But public demand was high.
Yeah.
So this started in the 1880s. A Swiss physician named Gottlieb Burckhardt performed surgeries in the brain of patients of an insane asylum with the goal not of curing them, but of making them docile. So he had 6 patients that he decided to operate on. One died, one committed suicide later, may or may not be connected, and, quote, some of them had the intended consequence. I'm not sure if it was the rest of them or not, because all I could find was some of them. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing there was no effect on some of them as well. That put forward this idea. They had been doing ablation and ablative experiments, which is cutting away some tissue from the brain, in dogs and monkeys for a while. But this was the first time that someone had done it to a person. And it kind of put forward this idea that, hey, the brains might work similarly, so this could be something to experiment with further. Cue the 1930s. 1935 happens. Americans Carlisle F. Jacobson and John Fulton performed ablative experiments with brains of chimpanzees, studied the behavior changes. Some of them got more agitated, some of them less agitated. And in the same year, encouraged by that, Portuguese scientist Antonio Egas Moniz. He's the big name behind this. He's one of 2 big names behind this. He won a Nobel Prize for this. He had gout and not a surgical background, so he couldn't perform the surgeries himself. So he had a surgeon on his staff perform these surgeries for him, but he was the brain power behind this. He would cut 2 holes. He would cut 2 holes in their head and then pour ethyl alcohol into their skull to destroy the frontal lobe.
Oh my goodness. I forgot about that part.
Yeah. It's super effective, as they say in Pokemon.
Do we need to put a trigger warning at the start of this episode?
I thought that's what I tried to do before.
He went straight to pouring ethyl alcohol on the skull.
They also created a tool called the leucotome, a.k.a. an ice pick that you use to scrape away some nerves. It's technically not the same ice pick that you might think about being used later. I'll call it a proto-pick. They called it a spatula. You cut open the entire skull and then use that to scrape away some neurons. By 1937, they tried it on about 40 patients and had mixed results. But key takeaway, this was one of the only things that had shown positive results sometimes.
For the symptoms that we're talking about.
For the symptoms that we're talking about, yes. There's also things like cocaine and laudanum, which we'll talk about later. But
laudanum being an opioid-based drug,
yes,
I believe.
Yes.
Now, quick question. Is there any talk of informed consent with these patients?
I doubt it.
That's usually a trend in medical things.
Usually it's
early
consent
1900s.
from the family, not consent of the patient themselves.
They might not be able to give consent.
Right. Same thing with like eugenics, where if families had family members that they didn't want to procreate, they would give consent for certain things to happen.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. So this is kind of the key takeaway from lobotomies, which I'm getting ahead of myself because there's more lobotomies coming, but a lot more. But medicine isn't about what's best for you. It's about what works. That's the field of medicine in a nutshell. That's why we do things like chemotherapy, where you poison people's bodies and hope the cancer dies first. It's not good for you, but it works. We still use lithium for bipolar disorder. Did you know that?
That is still.
We just give people lithium.
That's
Why? We don't know why it works, but it works.
I didn't know that was still.
Yeah, that
approved
is still the only major treatment that we
Uh-huh.
have, giving people lithium. It's about what works. Use of this from the get-go was criticized by other doctors. It didn't matter because it was the first thing that people had heard of that it works. And there was an American named Freeman who really, really, really pushed publicly that this was the cure-all. This was
Is this the guy
the
that
only option.
Is this the guy that basically becomes a door-to-door salesman for lobotomies?
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
And so it basically pushed lobotomies from being this obscure surgical procedure to being demanded by the public to be available for people with this issue. Freeman was the one who perfected the ice pick method, which is where, trigger warning, you have it's basically an ice pick that you shove through someone's eye. Eye socket. Yes, past the eye. You nudge the eye out of the way and shove it through where the bone's thin. And then you turn the frontal lobe to scramble egg, and bingo. You can be done in under 10 minutes, as opposed to the previous versions where you had to cut the whole skull open.
Because this was in such high demand, they streamlined the process so it could be done a lot faster.
It can be done so quick. Freeman eventually performed over 3,500 lobotomies himself.
And was he a
Personally.
board-certified surgeon?
I'm not positive.
I don't think he was.
I don't think he was.
I think I also heard stories of him doing two at once. An ice pick in each hand. Done. Like he would showboat these.
Yeah.
Have some showmanism,
Yeah.
showmanship. There we go.
He personally did the Rosemary Kennedy lobotomy.
Ah, yes, that's the famous one.
The famous, if for people that don't know, Rosemary Kennedy, JFK's sister, was developmentally delayed, and in her 20s started developing aggressive behaviors. And Mr. Freeman suggested lobotomies, and Kennedy Sr. decided to have it done without telling the rest of the family. It failed. Pretty quickly, they knew that it failed. They had her singing a song, I believe, while they did it, and she stopped singing, and they were like, "Ooh, that's not good." And to hide it, Kennedy Sr. threw her in a home
In Wisconsin.
in Wisconsin. Did not tell the rest of the family.
Know that?
Yeah, sad story.
It's very sad.
Thankfully, lobotomies were replaced by antipsychotics and other drugs pretty shortly after they'd begun. But the person who invented them, Moniz, as previously stated, still won a Nobel Prize for them in 1949.
It's a good example of people are desperate for treatments.
Yeah.
It was such a big
People will
problem.
try anything.
They were just throwing these people in homes, in hospitals, where they would just try to
And
keep them alive.
This was not the least humane cure for insanity that people tried. Like one doctor, I don't remember his name, at least some doctors, it was an idea that spread, had the idea that mental disorders were caused by infections from teeth, so he would just pull
Yank
all of his
teeth.
patients' teeth. like things like that. These were the types of things that were happening in insane asylums. So lobotomies, from that standpoint, kind of humane as an alternative, but still not efficacious. They worked sometimes
Very low
in
success rate.
very low success rate. They worked sometimes more in making people docile than in curing them. Other people relapsed, other people got worse, and other people like poor Miss Kennedy became vegetables.
I'll go next. Another question. This one does lead right into my topic today for the second one. Do you know who is the only person so far to win 2 unshared Nobel Prizes?
No.
His
Dr.
name,
Pepper.
His name is Linus Pauling. Does that name ring a bell for anyone?
Vaguely.
Vaguely.
Nope.
No, really? Okay. He won a 1954 Nobel Prize in Chemistry for his work on integrating quantum mechanics into understanding the behavior of electrons in chemical bonding. And
Okay, I'm familiar with the concept.
Yeah.
I didn't know the name.
sure. And it's funny how we teach that and then we don't teach like the history or the name behind it. Anyway,
Yeah, I try and do a little of that with physics, but there's just too much to get to.
it's true. Then in 1962, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his work on opposing nuclear weapons. Some of that work that dealt with the chemical bonding and integrating quantum mechanics was said to be too complicated by Albert Einstein. To give you an idea of this guy's level of intelligence for figuring this out, Albert Einstein was not able to make sense of his work.
Einstein didn't love mathematics, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And he's past his prime by that point. You do all your best high-level thinking in your 20s. That's when you make most... I think that's when physicists make most of their developments, is their 20s and their early 30s. Get on it, Mr. Walter.
Better get that doctorate real fast.
In 1961, Time, the magazine... It's still around, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are they still relevant?
No.
Does that mean anything to high schoolers?
I think the cover of Time magazine is still a thing that people talk about occasionally.
I think the cover of Time magazine is more popularly talked about in other magazines about look who was on the cover of Time magazine than Time magazine itself.
But nobody's actually ever seen the cover
I've
of Time
never
magazine.
seen a Time magazine. No, I think I have in Walmart probably.
Anyway,
I don't know.
This episode brought to you by Time
Brought to you by
magazine.
Time magazine.
Anyway,
Today's
Time,
cover, Dr. Linton.
Could be.
maybe 1961, Time magazine named him one of the greatest scientists who had ever lived. This Linus Pauling we're talking about. So what do you think? Another question that you can answer. What do you think winning a myriad of academic prizes and 2 unshared Nobel Prizes does to your ego?
A bit.
Maybe a bit.
Yeah, and I think the earlier in life you got them, the more you would feel like I have to stay relevant.
Sure.
Yeah. Do you think Napoleon would have invaded Russia if he had conquered Europe 10 years later?
Maybe.
Maybe.
These are good
Maybe
questions.
his ambitions would have been tempered.
So everything goes off the rails for Linus Pauling in the mid-1960s. And even before then, you could see some cracks in his armor. He wasn't impenetrable. He wasn't without faults. He tried to come up with the structure for the DNA molecule around the same time that James Watson and Francis Crick were doing it in the 1950s. He thought it was a triple helix,
Ooh, that would be fun.
which would be interesting. However, just completely wrong. We now know it's a double helix. They worked with the crystallography images from, what is her name? Such a shame that I forgot it now, because she probably should have also won a Nobel Prize for her work on this, but only Watson and Crick got it. Rosalind Franklin. She was able to procure those images of the DNA molecule. They were able to work backwards to figure it out. And anyway, so in the early 1960s, he's doing what you do as a 2-time Nobel Prize winning person trying to maintain a public image. He's giving talks. And in a talk, he says that he wishes he could live another 25 years, not 65 years. He is currently 65 years old, giving this talk in 1966. Wishes he could live another 25 years. And then he receives a letter from a quote-unquote biochemist named Irwin Stone suggesting that if you take 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, you will not only live 25 years longer, but probably more. So he promises that taking this high dose of vitamin C, which is 500 times the daily recommended amount.
How many oranges do you have to eat?
This is all either synthetic or concentrated.
Gotcha.
That you can live 25 years or longer. And he also goes on to claim that by taking this high dose vitamin C, that you can stave off different illnesses, namely the common cold.
Right.
So, and the credentials for this Stone are sketchy at best. 2 years studied chemistry in a college before receiving an honorary degree from the Los Angeles College of Chiropractic, and a bogus PhD from Donsbach University, a non-accredited correspondence school in California. So even when someone puts letters behind their name, now I'm not accusing Offit of everything, but just because someone has a lot of letters after their name doesn't necessarily mean they've done all the same work that other people have done that have a lot of letters after their name.
Right.
Mr. Linton has fully earned his degree.
No one doubt anything he says ever.
Yeah.
He is now indefatigable.
None of them have seen any evidence whatsoever that I have actually attained this degree.
Other than just listening to you talk, which a lot of people just get by on their good looks and how well they talk. Anyway, I'm not accusing you of that.
He's not accusing you of having good looks or being able to talk.
Some of us just get by.
Some of us get by.
So, Pauling thinks this is a great idea. He kind of takes Stone at his word and thinks this is what we should be doing.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? And this is where I think the author maybe takes a little bit of liberties, or he's taking a stance and saying that Pauling, because he has won these 2 Nobel Prizes, he's done all this other stuff, that he can do no wrong. He's making an assertion that Pauling thinks that he can do no wrong. I'm saying that Offit is making that claim, which I think there is a lot of evidence to support that from what he shows. So we talked about that this 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C is 500 times the recommended dose. Several universities jump on this bandwagon and see, is there any validity to this idea that it can first just prevent the common cold? And there is no connection found. Pauling is perturbed, and as I think for later, he threatens to sue, but then doesn't. Then Pauling suggests that vitamin C can cure cancer. And again, the universities and research institutes think, okay, let's at least test this because we've got this big name who's selling all his books that are hitting the shelves about these vitamins are bestsellers. Everyone loves the idea that if I just take a ton of a vitamin, that I can stave off the common cold, I can prevent a future cancer that I could be developing.
Yeah, and that's still, I think, very much true, as people anecdotally have told me to take everything from vitamin C to prevent the common cold, which is still
Not
something that I'm told on a regular basis, to if you take turmeric, you can prevent any kind of joint ailments.
Yeah. And until recently, it was being suggested by the medical community. I remember my general doctor saying that, just increase your vitamin D, because there are some studies that if you increase your vitamin D, you will reduce your risk of cancer or have some other. There were some studies that show that there was a correlation between vitamin D. But again, then some more recent studies said that there was not much of a correlation between that. So anyway, the main one kind of not putting any credence in the connection between vitamins and cancer is from the Mayo Clinic. And they see no connection between higher dose vitamin C and a reduction in cancer with their patients. Doesn't do a thing. And then there's a study that finds that vitamin C actually increases your chance of cancer.
Oof.
So it actually pushes the needle in the opposite direction. So what went wrong, apart from Linus Pauling in this claim that he thought he could do no wrong and was just blinded to all these studies, was that vitamin C, along with other compounds, are antioxidants. So the general idea is that as you burn calories, your body produces free radicals. These free radicals are things like just a single oxygen atom. They're very chemically reactive. If they hit your DNA, it can ruin your DNA, and damaged DNA can lead to cancer, can lead to a number of different conditions. So the idea with antibiotics, antioxidants, is to reduce the amount of free radicals, to reduce the damage to your DNA, damage to your cells, live a happier, longer life. The problem with having high-dose vitamin C is that you can push the needle too far. You can reduce so much of the free radicals that now cancer cells that just naturally pop up in your systems, in your tissue. I think
like the sun.
The sun, or I think the statistic I heard was that your body has a cancer cell being created every like 30 to 45 minutes from either just random mutation or from some type of external factor. It's just that your immune system is very good at recognizing cancer cells. So your immune system just kills those right away. But if you reduce, now the oxidants, the free radicals, can also kill cancer cells. So if you're reducing the amount of free radicals in your system, now you're allowing more cancer cells to live. It's more work for your immune system. It's a higher chance, higher likelihood that you will gain cancer. The other thing is that you are taking all these vitamins just in a capsule or standalone, where in nature, these vitamins are surrounded by other compounds in fruits, vegetables, that they have been found to enhance their effects. So if you just take things in isolation, it's not as good. So the whole idea of just watch what you eat and just eat well is still one of the best. Trying to get as much vitamins from natural sources and not just going to the vitamin store and ordering up your vitamin C, vitamin D is still the best option. The Offit ends this section by saying the warning is pay attention to the little man behind the curtain, because even if they are a prominent figure and they have a lot of credentials, even Nobel Prizes, they can still be wrong. Humans still do err from time to time.
You know what, though? I got something I got to say about that.
Okay.
Why can't people just let others like what they like?
Because maybe you like something wrong.
Because it seems like we are only allowed to enjoy things if it's acceptable, air quotes, to enjoy them. Just look at how quickly everyone had to cycle out their Stanley water bottles for Owalas, because suddenly Stanleys, nerd,
Lead?
aren't cool anymore.
Aren't cool anymore.
And I'm pretty sure those are all about to get cycled out for hydro jugs, based on what I'm starting to see. You heard it first on here, folks. This is not even our predictions episode. Hydro jugs are next.
Is this different from Hydro Flask?
Yes.
Okay.
You know what? I have actually enjoyed some of the Marvel stuff since Endgame. Shame on me.
Shame on you.
But no,
That's fine. That's
we
good.
can't just quietly have a different opinion. We have to hate on everyone that was connected to every recent Marvel project and anyone who had even a hint of positive things to say about it. Look, I went through a condescending art phase. I thought I was so great because I watched films no one had ever heard of before.
Why are you looking at me?
As if that somehow made me better.
It does.
It didn't. I sucked. Do I enjoy country music? No, not even a little bit.
No, it's terrible.
It doesn't speak to my lived experience. I've never wanted a pickup truck. I think cowboy boots look uncomfortable, and I like living in the suburbs. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. You probably won't enjoy my music either, and that's fine. I shouldn't be able to make you feel bad about what you like. If you want to listen to Nickelback while wearing a new pair of Skechers and eating pineapple pizza, that's between you and your Spotify algorithm, folks. If it makes you happy and doesn't hurt anyone else, you don't need to apologize for enjoying it. And stop making other people apologize too. Nobody's handing out trophies for being a jerk about taste.
That is one of the blessings of getting older, is learning to think less of what other people think of you for what you like and enjoy. Or just learning to enjoy. I've always struggled with being proud in enjoying what I enjoy. I was very self-conscious when I was younger. I'm trying to grow out of that. being a huge nerd also doesn't help. I'll give that. Any other comments, Mr.
No.
Walter? Okay, I'll give that rant a minus.
I was debating giving you an F minus because you said you liked Marvel, but I'll give you a B.
And that is why I looked at you and I said that part that I said.
There is objectively worse art than other art. I do agree that other people can like it, though.
Mr. Walter, why don't you go next with
You want me to go next?
For the
Do you
record,
expect
for the
it to be
record.
heavier?
I didn't say that some art wasn't better than other art. I just said there's nothing wrong with enjoying things that you know are less good art.
A hamburger is good every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
If people enjoy a hamburger
Yeah. I have a hamburger at least once a week.
from Quick Trip.
Probably. Man, their patty melts on Texas toast. The best.
This episode brought to you by
Quick Trip. All right. Well, speaking of Quick Trip, I don't know. I
Were you hoping for a better transition?
I needed a segue. Opium, everybody. Humans figured out how to get high at about 5000 BC from opium. It was used in rituals and anesthetics in every form it's used today. Besides injection, probably.
I was going to say they probably didn't have the
We
injection.
used a hollow bodkin. But they would eat it. They would use it in poultices, so it would be incorporated like some kind of an anesthetic balm, like a burn cream or something. And they also smoked it, so used it in all of those. Very little has changed. But one of the most interesting early uses I found was that it was used for suicide as a 2-part suicide. It was the anesthetic for it paired with hemlock, just like we do for our 3-step lethal injections, where we have a sedative, a paralytic, and then a heart stopper. By the late Roman period, it was used as an anesthetic for surgeries specifically. And by the Middle Ages, because after the fall of Rome, everybody forgot everything. By the Middle Ages, it was reintroduced in the West as a narcotic. Mid-1500s gave rise to the invention of what we call laudanum, then called a tincture of opium. And it was widely used to ease pain and help sleep. Thomas Sydenham, a.k.a. the father of English medicine, also known as English Hippocrates, was quoted as saying, "Among the remedies which it has pleased Almighty God to give man to relieve his sufferings, none is so universal and so efficacious as opium." And it was also said to be one of the 49, 52, whatever, ingredients in Mithridatium, which was supposed to be, it's a semi-mythical panacea invented by a king in like Byzantium or something. It had like 52 ingredients. It was supposed
Dr.
to cure
Pepper?
anything. Dr. Pepper, yeah, 23 flavors. This episode brought to you, no,
Wait, what was the point of that semi-mythical combination?
it was supposed to be a panacea, cure-all.
Okay, okay.
A cure-all for. So opium. My point with saying that is opium has long been thought of as a cure-all, and opium in its future forms will also be thought of as a cure-all. It was safer and more effective than other remedies, which is why they used it, just like lobotomies. And it was used all the way through the 1800s. When we were using things like arsenic and mercury to try and cure people, hey, opium's more effective and it's safer than poisoning yourself. Also, you don't have to use emetics. So it continued to be used, and it began to be used to treat nervous disorders. It was one of the things that replaced lobotomies. And it's widely used for surgeries and quote-unquote female complaints, which led to a large increase in addictions,
Yep.
particularly in the West.
I believe it is one of the most addictive substances.
Yes,
known
it
to
is.
man.
Absolutely.
Are you going to talk about the mechanism by which it works?
I am not. Would you like to go
Just
break
briefly,
it down?
what I understand is it just blocks pain receptors.
Yes.
There's a natural, I forget if they call it an opioid receptor in your neurons that transmits pain, and if a neurotransmitter is there, it blocks the pain, and opium fits that
receptor.
so it'll block the pain
Like a glove.
Yep.
What gives rise to the other half of the opium, which is gaining pleasure from it? Is it still just blocking the pain?
It might just, yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure about that.
We're only in 1804, and that's when the daddy of cocaine, morphine, gets developed. It's the first, like, actual refinement of opium, whereas laudanum was just opium dissolved in alcohol, kind of like Coca-Cola, the original Coca-Cola. Morphine is actually refined, so you can give precise dosages.
Named after Morpheus, the god of dreams, I believe.
I believe so, yeah. There's some wacky and not too great experiments that the guy who discovered how to refine it had with him and 6 boys, I think. You can read about that if you want. The first alkaloid...
Pass.
It was the first alkaloid to be isolated. So for reference, because it was isolated and everyone saw how important it was, that's why we started isolating other alkaloids such as noscapine, strychnine, veratrine, caffeine, quinine. So we probably wouldn't have had those to do things like quinine is super useful. We still drink it today in a good G&T. It's an anti-malarial.
Yep, if you're of age.
You can just get the tonic water if
the
you
tonic
like
water.
the taste of quinine. I've never been a huge fan.
Yeah, tonic water has sugar in it and the kind of the
quinine.
bitter
and
taste of
this is
quinine.
why, fun fact, this is why people will give you like Canada Dry or other sodas like that when you're sick. They give you those sodas and what are they called? A cream soda or whatever, and crackers, because those sodas used to have quinine in them.
Interesting.
So they used to be actually medicinal. But that has stuck around as, hey, drinking soda and having crackers when you feel ill does actually make you feel better. It's fine. And then in 1855, cocaine became developed.
Hello, everyone. Future me here editing this video. We noticed that Mr. Walter refers to cocaine as being possibly an opiate derivative. It is not. It is derived from a different plant. But we're going to leave that part in. So enjoy it, but just know that cocaine is not an opiate derivative.
Bingo. Here we come, Addiction Town. It's widely used for medical practices, for everything. They think it's a panacea. Again, a cure-all. By 1898, a new kid on the block was marketed as non-addictive morphine substitute and cough medicine for children, as well as used as a cure for cocaine. It's from the Bayer Company. You know, the aspirin guys. It's got to be great. You know what we're talking about? That's right. Heroin. And it is also created by opium.
There's this interesting history because opioids are such a powerful tool, but they always have the side effect of addiction. There's always this attempt to get a non-addictive opioid-based painkiller or medicine, and it has failed nearly every single time it has failed.
And heroin will continue to be used medically for things as just the stronger cocaine. Even though only 4 years later, 1902, also Bayer creates the first semi-synthetic opioid, oxycodone, more commonly known as Oxycontin. Still a problem to this day. To this day, no drug has been found that can outperform or even match opium and its derivatives without also matching or outperforming its addictive properties. Morphine remains the drug of choice for combat medics in the U.S. military. I found that fascinating. It's 16 milligram doses in an EpiPen type delivery system. They used to be syrettes in World War II. The world's largest producer of opium, that's right, regular opium, is still produced. Not medicinally. That's pretty much only used recreationally now. And it's, remember, with opium, it's not refined, so you can't get good doses of it. Which is why we don't use it medically. The largest producer used to be Afghanistan. They produced up to around 9,000 tons in 2017. That was the peak of their production. Before that, it was somewhere in the 5,000 to 7,000 ton range per year. That was shut down by the Taliban in 2023. Production dropped 95%, so they produced about 500 tons instead of 9,000 in 2023, which massively affected their economy. As you can imagine, widespread loss of income and also a 5 times spike in the cost of opium. Australia, France, Spain, and Turkey are the main producers of the poppy straws that we use to refine morphine. That was as of 2010. I couldn't find a change in that. And as of 2021, an estimated 60 million people use opioids worldwide, leading to about 39.5 million, that's over 50%, cases of drug use disorders.
And I believe the general anesthesia we use is opioid-based, isn't it?
It is opioid-based.
Yeah, and I remember reading that we still don't know the exact mechanism that allows it to work?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did. It's one of those science things or one of those medical things I was talking about.
We just know it works.
We know it works,
but we don't know exactly
so we use
how or why it works.
If we knew how it worked exactly, I think we could probably come up with one that wasn't addictive. One would hope, but maybe it's just really difficult to create complex molecules. Who'd have thunk?
We got AI working
really
on.
good at it.
We got AI working on folding proteins, though. So,
all of that was a lot, and it didn't even get into how the Sackler family intentionally got huge chunks of America addicted to opiates.
Are you talking about the Oxycontin, oxycodone? Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Yeah. So this was just a history of opium. It's interesting because this was on the list of the things that you had for, what did we say? Scientific mistakes,
Science
gone wrong. I'm not even sure this has gone wrong per se. Like, science is doing the best it can here, and it's the only thing we know of.
It's just one of those
that does what it does.
Yeah, it's just one of those really powerful tools that can go wrong very easily.
Yes.
And I think that's a theme that we see throughout science. Take the nuclear weapons, nuclear power.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on atom bombs in this.
No, or gene editing, where we can do a lot of either good or bad, and it's a razor's edge and slippery slope from one side to the other. And that's kind of why in one of the essential questions is science just a tool? Some people will just see it as just a tool, but there's the tools of science are so powerful, so potent, so much rides on how we use them.
Yeah. We've reached a point in science that we are just one bad decision from the movie Gattaca becoming a reality, which is kind of scary to think about.
Yeah. So all of this is really just, some of this might be useful. What if we did all of it all the time?
Yeah.
That would be better, right?
Right.
Good segue.
Yeah. So, the ancient Spartans famously would, if they had a child that they deemed to be unhealthy in some way, would abandon it in the wilderness to keep the Spartan line pure.
Right.
Let's talk about eugenics.
We're getting real fun at the end here.
Look, I didn't save me for last. So eugenics as a field of study, the person who's kind of credited with first kind of encapsulating it formally was a guy named Francis Galton, who interestingly enough, was a half-cousin of Charles Darwin.
Yes.
In 1883, he talked about this theory. Darwin didn't fully buy into all of this, but anyway, he really talked about the idea of traits and heredity and passing on positive characteristics or trying to limit the passing on of negative human characteristics. And that idea, which starts as maybe innocent enough, gets out of hand pretty quickly. I'm going to choose to focus mostly on eugenics in the United States because I think everybody is aware of eugenics in Nazi Germany. Mm-hmm. But maybe not so much eugenics in the United States. And so that's going to be kind of my focus here. There was, in the United States, founded in 1921, a group called the American Eugenics Society. Any guesses when that society officially disbanded?
Oh, no.
Now,
After the 2000s.
yes.
Seriously?
It did have a name change at some point, but what the American Eugenics Society officially disbanded in 2019. It was no longer called the American Eugenics Society. I forget the name of
Did
it.
COVID shut it down? Is this the one good thing that came
No,
out of COVID?
that was before COVID. I forget. It was
Wow.
like more like biogenetics or something. They changed the name to make it not about eugenics anymore, but it was still the same organization that had just undergone a name change.
I'd be really interested to see who was funding them throughout those
Yeah.
later 20th century and early 21st century years.
But what it really comes down to is this question of how do we promote positive genetic traits while limiting the impact of negative ones? How do we do that as a society?
Social Darwinism.
Yeah, I mean that is also related and wrapped up into this, right? So the implications, like the list of things that has been tried in the name of this goal of promoting positive traits while limiting negative ones, includes everything from genetic screens to birth control to promoting differential birth rates, marriage restrictions, segregation, both racially and sequestering the mentally ill, compulsory sterilization, forced abortions or forced pregnancies, and genocide.
It's quite a dark history of American history, a dark chapter of American history that seems to have gotten forgotten.
Yeah. So let's talk. I'm going to talk some specifics in American history now. So one of the leaders in the field of eugenics in the United States was a guy named Harry Laughlin. Harry Laughlin was the head of a group called the Eugenics Record Office. It sounds like it's a government agency. It was not a government agency. It had connections to the Carnegie Institute, I believe.
They were flush with cash from all the big names in that day and age.
Yeah. And so he is the leader of this and really pushes eugenics in the United States for probably about 20 years. Now, some of the earliest successes that they had actually had to do with immigration restrictions. There's a group called the Immigration Restriction League, and eugenics, this idea of keeping genetics pure and promoting positive traits, limiting negative traits. One of the applications that gained traction early was in trying to limit who can come to the United States to try to keep our genetic pool pure. So the major piece of immigration legislation that's kind of passed in this is called the Immigration Act of 1924. Prior to that, they tried to limit immigration through literacy tests because there was this sense that if people couldn't read, it was because they were genetically inferior. And so if we keep people out who can't read, then we'll keep the country pure. But the Immigration Act of 1924 really ramped that up a lot. So wrapped into that one piece of legislation was Asian exclusion. So we banned all Asians from immigrating to the United States because they were deemed the least lowest of on the genetic list. Also, they were super trying to limit Eastern and Southern European influence. So in order to try to do that, they put into this something called the National Origins Act, which basically said that immigration was going to be based on, and quotas were going to be based on who is already in the United States. So we have a lot of Northwestern Europeans, a lot of Nordic peoples. And so we're going to favor immigration from that region of Europe. Now, again, the rationale is, well, that's who's already here. So, but there's a eugenic bent to this to try to keep that racial purity, and especially when you talk about Nordic race and things like that, it hopefully sends up some red flags. But that was wrapped into this. Also wrapped into the Immigration Act of 1924, a new government agency was created called the Border Patrol. So that is where that agency originates.
Interesting. I didn't know it was that old.
Yes. So a lot of immigration restrictions passed in the name of eugenics. They also passed anti-miscegenation laws, which basically bans intermarriage of races. Probably most famously was Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which prohibited intermarriage between races and said that a white person, they defined a white person, this is a quote from the act, no trace whatever of any blood other than Caucasian, but persons who have 1/16 or less of the blood of the American Indian and have no other non-Caucasian blood shall be deemed to be white persons.
Okay.
So that was passed in 1924, again, wrapped up in this eugenics thing. There also was attempts to try to classify people as either fit or unfit to have children. In fact, in order to try to promote, because remember, this is one of those things, is to promote positive genetic traits, some doctors and medical professionals refused to give upper-class women birth control access because they wanted them to have more children. Meanwhile, lower-class women were unfit and often targeted with those types of things. And the weirdest, if I'm sorting things by weirdness, this is the weirdest. They also began sponsoring Better Baby contests. Have you heard of Better Baby contests?
Yes.
I think I've read about those.
So apparently Indiana.
Hoosiers.
Indiana shows up here a couple times.
This explains some things.
It wasn't I think the Battle Creek, Michigan is mentioned somewhere with all this, like the eugenics record off. Well, that might have been Cold Spring Harbor.
I think that might be tied to Kellogg.
Kellogg,
was
yeah,
a big
that was
eugenicist.
That was it.
Yeah. So the Indiana State Fair, its biggest Better Baby contest happened in 1930. They had 1,300 babies entered into this Better Baby contest, where they were judged based on basically eugenics criteria. Only white babies were allowed to enter into the Better Baby contest.
Of course.
Closely related to that were fitter family contests, where entire families could be entered and then judged based on how racially pure they were.
Are you the American dream?
And maybe now we'll go from the wackiest, weirdest to the worst, is they also passed compulsory sterilization laws. Again, Indiana was the first state to pass a compulsory sterilization law. 30 other states would follow suit. It is estimated that between 1907 and 1963, over 64,000 individuals were forcibly sterilized under eugenic legislation in the United States.
There's a famous court case where it goes all the way with the Supreme Court. It's a Buck v. Bell, and it's a teenage girl who's raped, is found to be pregnant, and I think it's Virginia. They want to sterilize her against her will after she has the baby. And it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And Supreme Court votes, I think it's, how many Supreme Court justices are there?
9.
It's 8-1, I think, in favor of sterilization. And the opinion is something like there's enough of this family already. We should just stop this family line. That comes from the majority opinion written by the Supreme Court at the time.
So while I focusing on the United States, I want to make this connection to Nazi Germany, and that is that the success of eugenics programs in the United States do serve as a template for eugenics programs in Nazi Germany. For instance, the Rockefeller Foundation helped develop and fund various German eugenics programs in the prior to World War II. Harry Laughlin, the guy that I mentioned earlier, he often bragged that his model eugenic sterilization laws were the basis for the Nuremberg racial hygiene laws that Germany would implement in 1935. In 1936, Laughlin was actually invited to an award ceremony in Heidelberg University in Germany, where he received an honorary doctorate for his work on the science of racial cleansing. That award ceremony was scheduled on the anniversary of the 1934 purge of Jews from the Heidelberg faculty.
It's so nuts.
And we know what happens next. But that influence is fascinating, and I think something that we kind of try to flush and forget about. Now, what I also found kind of interesting as I was researching this topic is there is kind of an ongoing debate currently about the scientific validity of eugenics, as in you will find people arguing, well, look, as a field, there are some pieces to it that are useful, and we don't want to, throw the Hitler out with the bathwater, because the defining line is now individual consent or informed consent. So, like, if a person chooses, is that qualify as eugenics? And do we have an interest as a society to provide counseling to people on this issue and then let them make their own informed decision?
Well, certain countries which are not unprominent, in the world are still performing eugenics today, which is probably the only reason it's still a discussion and not just a blanket statement. Because which Nordic country is it that has eliminated Down syndrome?
I don't know.
It's Sweden or Iceland or
I don't know.
one of them. I think it's Iceland eliminated Down syndrome with eugenics.
Interesting. Yeah, there. I think the statistics are you can blame your parents for about like 60 to 70% of your intelligence, and your height is like connected to 80 to 90% of your parents' genetics. A lot of the traits they were trying to control for, some of them are connected to your DNA, some of them just are not connected to your DNA. And the whole philosophy of controlling for everything with genetics was a faulty one to begin with. And it doesn't it doesn't control for free will and choice and your environment and upbringing. They thought you were your DNA. They did not have a very much growth mindset back in those days, the eugenicists. They thought you were a known factor that you could not grow past that. Closing thoughts. So this maybe was a little sobering at times with all the bad stuff that science has done, or stuff has been done in the name of science. We can come at it with a worldview that we know that God is still in control, that he will still work good through these things, and that we make a lot of mistakes, that we can learn from our mistakes. Hopefully, we try to learn from these lessons to not get duped, to not get hoodwinked, to learn to do some of our own research, and to, we can trust science, but you can also have some skepticism, and there's never anything proven in science. It's just upheld until the theory is either refined or a new theory takes its place.
I don't think I'm as down on science as you sounded right there, because I think in these instances, in all of them to some degree, it was a rush towards an end, and it had to selectively ignore data along the way in order to achieve some end, and so I think it leaves this lingering question of, what guardrails need to be in place, what kind of slowdowns or speed bumps must exist in the scientific process to prevent that kind of catastrophe from happening again. When we discover some miracle cure, obviously the push is going to be to want to get it into practice as soon as possible, but that can have its own risks, and maybe sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. And a discussion about what those guardrails is good, but I think in the end, we've also seen that the science has come through in the end and steered us back on the right path.
I think what we need to do to cleanse the palate is do another episode of science, but look at some great achievements of science throughout history.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. This is why peer reviewing is important, is the alternate title of this episode. Maybe that'll be the subtitle. People are idiots. We think we're smart sometimes, but we're idiots. So make sure you know what you're looking at. Don't just run into a fad. The grapefruit diet sounds delicious, but it sure is expensive, and it probably doesn't help you much. Yeah, this is why we say that people say you're supposed to study history because then you can learn from it. That doesn't work at all. If we had learned from one of these, we wouldn't have done it 7 more times. So humans are going to keep on doing the same mistakes. Just do your best to become informed about the things before you run into them, and don't get too wrapped up in an ideology or a goal that you ignore the red flags to reaching that goal.
Try not to let the ends justify the means.
There you go. That's a more succinct way to say it.
That's one of those confirmation bias things. Don't do that.
Yeah. But life finds a way. For homework, talk to your family. Ask them what they think science's silliest moment was, and see if you learn some things about other mistakes that humans have made and how you can avoid them in your life.
Alrighty. On that note, if you have any ideas, please make sure you comment on YouTube or Spotify, or send us an email at smartestguyspod@gmail.com. We thank you for listening. The class is dismissed.